I want to tell you about the moment I realized I had been living inside someone else's lie. Not a small lie. Not an exaggeration or an omission, or the kind of thing people tell themselves is not really lying. A complete architectural, load-bearing lie. The kind that requires planning. The kind that requires other people to know and to help. The kind that, when it finally comes down, takes everything with it. I had just come out of a 12-year relationship when I met him. 12 years. I will not go into all of that right now. That is its own story for another day. But what I will tell you is that by the time that relationship ended, I had forgotten what it felt like to be chosen, to be seen, to be the person someone wanted to come home to. And then I met Marcus. And Marcus was everything: charming, handsome, funny. He looked at me like I was the most interesting woman in any room we ever walked into together. He said I love you before I did. He introduced me to his family within weeks. His niece started calling me Auntie, before I had even thought about what that might mean. I thought I had won something. After 12 years of slowly disappearing inside a relationship that had run out of warmth, I thought the universe had finally decided to be generous. I was not lucky, I was selected. There is a difference. And understanding that difference is what this story is about. My name is Sophia. And today I am going to tell you about a woman who was hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led completely astray. And what she did when she finally found out the truth. Stay with me, because the revenge in this story is not loud, it is not dramatic. It does not arrive with a speech or a confrontation or a moment anyone could have filmed. It arrives as a phone call to the IRS, as a document filed with child support services, as a tax refund intercepted, as a warrant for arrest that a man walked directly into believing he was going to meet his daughter. It is the quietest, most complete, most permanent kind of revenge I have ever had the privilege of telling you about. Stay with me. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Sophia and this is Calm Drama. Hit subscribe right now, because this story is going to stay with you. And I have a new one for you every single day now. Let me tell you about Jade. She had been single for about 6 months when she met him. We will call her Jade. She was in her mid-30s. She had spent her 20s and the early part of her 30s in a relationship that had slowly, quietly, without any single dramatic moment, simply run out of everything. No explosion, no betrayal. Just the long, gradual dimming of two people who had grown in different directions and stayed together out of habit and history and the fear of starting again. When it finally ended, she gave herself 6 months to breathe, to remember who she was outside of that relationship, to sleep in the middle of the bed and watch whatever she wanted and eat dinner at whatever time she felt like eating it. And then she met Marcus. He came into her life the way certain people do. Suddenly, completely, with an energy that made the room feel different. He was tall. He had the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the reason he was smiling. He was attentive in a way that felt almost overwhelming after years of being gradually invisible. He told her he loved her first. She had not even fully processed what was happening between them when, as he said it, looking at her across a dinner table like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like of course he loved her. What else would he feel? She said it back, because she meant it, because by then she did. He told her about his life with a kind of openness she found disarming. He had 3 children, he said, 3 different mothers. He talked about the complexities of it honestly. Or so she thought. He said the mother of his oldest daughter kept him away from the child, that she was bitter and difficult, and used the little girl as a weapon. He said it with the sadness of a man who had been wronged and kept a dignified silence about it. She believed him. Why would she not believe him? He was standing right in front of her, open and honest and sad about his child. Liars do not talk about their children with that particular kind of grief in their voice. Or so she thought. She met his family, his siblings, his mother, his niece who was 10 years old, and started calling her Auntie within the first month. She sat at their family dinners. She laughed at their inside jokes. She became, slowly and then all at once, a part of something that felt like a real life being built. She thought she had found her people. She had found an audience. There is a particular kind of discomfort that arrives before you are ready to name what is causing it. It settles somewhere between your shoulder blades. It wakes you up at 3 in the morning for no reason you can articulate. It makes you pay slightly more attention to things you would normally let slide. The timing of a message, the charge level of a phone, the reason a story changed slightly in the retelling. Jade started feeling it about 4 months in. There was a woman, Marcus called her his ex. They had 2 children together, 2 little girls, aged 4 and 6. The story he told was that both of them had demanding jobs that required travel, and so they had signed legal guardianship of the girls over to the maternal grandmother to make things like schooling and medical emergencies simpler. It was an unusual arrangement, but not impossible. People made difficult choices for their children. She accepted it. Then the ex started calling every day, multiple times a day. Sometimes when they were in the middle of dinner. Sometimes at midnight. Then, the ex moved to their city for a work training program. Then the training program became permanent. She was staying. And when Jade asked why the girls were not coming too, why 2 children aged 4 and 6 were staying with their grandmother while their mother relocated permanently, Marcus looked at her with that patient, reasonable expression she had come to know, and said that the girls needed stability, that changing schools at that age would be disruptive. A 4-year-old, in a different school. More disruptive than being separated from both parents. She filed it. She did not confront it. She told herself she was being the cool, trusting girlfriend. She told herself it was not her place. She told herself she believed him. The thing about the stories we tell ourselves is that we always know, somewhere underneath them, that they are stories. Marcus worked in what he described as the cannabis industry. He and the ex's brother-in-law would travel to states where cannabis was legal, purchase it in large quantities, and transport it back via the postal service. Trafficking, in the plain language of the law. But she was the cool girlfriend and it was not her place. When he told her he was going to Oregon for a week, she thought nothing of it. Oregon was a legal state. It made sense since he was gone for a week. His phone was always dead when she called, despite the fact that she had personally seen him put a fully charged power bank in his bag before he left. His responses to messages were hours apart and oddly brief for a man who normally texted her constantly. And then one of his friends, a woman she had never heard of, never seen on any of his social media, never been mentioned once in a year of knowing him, started posting photographs, selfies, cuddled up, smiling in Oregon. Jade looked at those photographs for a long time, and then she put down her phone, sat very still for a moment, and did what women do when something has been confirmed that they already knew. She breathed, and then she got to work. She ended it publicly. I will be honest with you. She will tell you herself that it was not her most dignified moment. She made a post on his Facebook wall. She said what she knew. She named the woman in the photographs. She did not hold back. It was the kind of post that people screenshot and send to each other. The kind that spreads. The kind that, if you are someone with secrets, represents exactly the kind of chaos you have spent years engineering your life to avoid. For Marcus, it was a catastrophe. For Jade, it was accidentally the best thing she could have done, because the mother of his oldest daughter saw it. We will call her Renee. Renee had been trying for years to find someone, anyone, who was connected to Marcus and willing to listen. She had a story to tell, and no one on his side of things had ever been willing to hear it. She had written him off. She had stopped expecting anything. She had built a life for herself and her daughter, without him in it, and made peace with the fact that he would never be held accountable. And then she saw Jade's post. She sent a message. She said she had information. She said she knew this was hard to hear, but that Jade deserved to know the truth. Jade, to her enormous credit, said yes, tell me everything, and Renee did. I want you to understand something before I tell you what Renee said. There is a particular kind of shock that does not feel like shock. It feels like recognition. Like your body already knew, and was simply waiting for the words to confirm it. Like the discomfort you had been carrying between your shoulder blades for months was not anxiety or paranoia, but your own intelligence trying to protect you. That is what Jade felt as Renee talked. Not shock, recognition. And then, as each new thing was revealed, something that was not quite shock, but was certainly in the same neighborhood, because some of what Renee told her, she had not seen coming at all. This is what the truth looked like. Marcus had never once contacted his oldest daughter. Not once. He had her phone number. Renee had made sure of that, had given it to him directly, had removed every possible excuse for absence. He had never used it. No calls, no texts, no birthdays acknowledged, no Christmases. The story he had told Jade, about being kept away, about Renee being bitter and difficult, was a complete fabrication designed to make him appear to be a wounded father rather than an absent one. He owed $20,000 in back child support. Not a small overdue amount, $20,000. He had never once made a single payment. He moved frequently, and worked under the table specifically to avoid collection. Renee had been trying for years to get a garnishment order enforced, and had never been able to locate him consistently enough to make it happen. His criminal record was extensive. It began when he was 15 years old with a rape charge. It continued through his adult life with fraud, larceny, and drug-related offenses. None of this had ever come up. None of this had ever been mentioned. She had spent a year with a man whose criminal history began with sexual violence and continued without interruption. And she had known nothing. The ex who had moved to their city, the woman who called multiple times a day, the woman whose daughters were living with their grandmother while she relocated. She was not his ex, she was his girlfriend of 9 years, very much still in a relationship with him. She had moved to their city to be closer to Marcus. She had left her daughters with her mother, not because of school stability, but because she and Marcus preferred to live without the responsibility of parenting. They were, both of them, actively using him heroin, her prescription pills, and a life with 2 small children did not fit around that. Jade had not been the girlfriend. She had been the side arrangement, the respectable face. The woman he brought to family dinners and introduced as Auntie to his niece. Because having a stable, professional partner made him look better to the world. She sat with that for a moment, and then Renee told her the last thing. There was a 4th child. Not 3, 4. 17 years ago, Marcus and a woman had conceived a child together. Rather than acknowledge paternity, Marcus had conspired with the mother to pin it on another man entirely. That man, an innocent person who had nothing to do with any of this, had been paying child support for 17 years for a child that was not his. 17 years of his money. 17 years of his life connected to a child he believed was his son. And somewhere, that child had grown up believing in a father who was not his father. Jade was silent for a long time after Renee finished. Then she said thank you. She meant it completely. And then she sat down and thought very carefully about what she was going to do next. Here is the decision point of this story. And I want to spend some time here because I think it is the most important moment. More important than any of the revenge that follows. Jade had a choice. She could consider herself lucky. She could take the truth she had been given, close the door on that year of her life, and walk away with her dignity intact. She had not been physically harmed. She had not lost money. She had lost time and trust and the version of herself that believed in Marcus. But she was free now. She knew the truth. She could simply leave. Many women would have done exactly that. There is wisdom in walking away. There is genuine courage in deciding that your own peace is worth more than any outcome you could engineer for someone who hurt you. I want to be clear about that. Choosing yourself and choosing to go, that is not weakness. That is sometimes the strongest possible thing. But Jade thought about Renee, who had spent years trying to make a garnishment order stick, while Marcus moved around and worked cash jobs, and laughed at the system from a safe distance. She thought about his oldest daughter, who had a father with her phone number, who had never once used it. She thought about the man who had been paying child support for 17 years, for a child that was not his, who was walking around right now not knowing, who might never know. She thought about the woman in Oregon with a criminal record that included killing someone in a drink-driving accident, who was currently living with Marcus and presumably the next woman he would run this same play on. She thought about his family, his mother, his siblings, his niece who had called her Auntie, who had all known, who had included their own 10 and 16-year-old children in the lie. And she decided, not out of bitterness, not out of heartbreak, not out of wounded pride. She decided because someone had to, because he had been doing this, all of it, every version of it, the fraud and the abandonment and the trafficking and the manufactured paternity, and the side women and the heroin, for his entire adult life without consequence. He had built a complete architecture of lies, lived inside it comfortably, because no one had ever had both the information and the willingness to use it simultaneously. Jade now had both, and she was thorough. I want to pause here for a moment, because I want to know where you are right now, as you are listening to this. Would you have chosen lucky? Or would you have chosen thorough? Drop it in the comments while you listen. I am going to be reading them from the moment this goes live. Now let me tell you what thorough looked like. She started with Renee. Not because Renee was the priority, though getting Marcus's oldest daughter the support she was owed absolutely was, but because Renee needed specific information to act, and Jade had it. A year of access to someone's life gives you things: his social security number, his state ID numbers, his current address and the addresses he had used before, his employer contacts and the nature of his work. She gave Renee everything, all of it. Every document, every detail, every piece of identifying information she had accumulated over a year of being in his life. Renee contacted her state's child support services within 24 hours. The consequences began to arrive. His driving license would be revoked, not in one state, in every state. There is a federal system, most people do not know this, that links child support delinquency across state lines. It does not matter where he moves. It does not matter which state he tries to get a new license in. Until he is current on $20,000 of back child support, he will not legally drive anywhere in this country. If he ever obtains formal employment, the kind that comes with a paycheck rather than cash in hand, 25% of his wages will be garnished automatically. Not requested, not negotiated, taken. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in the state where his oldest daughter lives. Now, let me tell you about the warrant. Because this is where the story becomes something almost cinematic. Marcus, unaware that any of this has been set in motion, decided around this time that he wanted to look like a good father. He contacted Renee. He said he wanted to arrange a visit with his daughter. He was bringing his new girlfriend, the woman from Oregon, and he thought it would be nice for their children to meet. Renee said that sounded lovely. She said yes, absolutely. She gave him a time and a place, and she was warm and cooperative, and gave him absolutely no reason to suspect anything at all. Marcus drove to that meeting, believing he was about to introduce his daughter to his new life. He was not met by his daughter. He was met by police officers who had a warrant for his arrest for failure to pay child support. He will not be leaving until he pays a significant portion of the $20,000 he owes, plus bail. For a man who works under the table and has no savings, and whose only income source is about to be significantly disrupted, this is not a small ask. But let us talk about the tax refund. Because the timing of this piece is, and I say this with complete sincerity, almost beautiful. Jade gave Renee Marcus's information the day before his federal tax refund was scheduled to be deposited. One day before Renee moved fast. She got his information to child support services fast enough that they were able to flag the refund before it processed. The entire amount was intercepted, seized, redirected. For the first time in the life of his oldest daughter, Marcus paid for something. It was not voluntary, it was not generous. It was taken from him while he was not looking, and it went where it should have gone years ago. But it happened. The back child support owed is now on his credit report permanently. Every lender, every landlord, every employer who runs a credit check will see it. The number, the duration, the history of a man who has never once voluntarily provided for his child. And then there was the business. The ex's brother-in-law ran a legitimate-seeming business that Marcus used as a cover, and through which Jade had reason to believe drug trafficking money was being laundered. She knew the name of the business. She knew enough of the structure to make a credible report. She called the IRS. She told them what she knew. She gave them the business name. She explained the nature of the operation as she understood it. She left it with them. An IRS investigation is not a quick thing, but it is a thorough one. And now Marcus's only reliable income source, the cash work that had kept him invisible and mobile and beyond the reach of garnishment orders for years, is under federal scrutiny. He cannot get a job at a mainstream employer. His criminal record, which begins with a rape charge at 15 and continues without significant interruption, ensures that background checks exist, they work. He cannot work under the table without risking the investigation closing in. He cannot drive without a valid license. He cannot receive a tax refund without it being redirected. He cannot get credit or rent an apartment without a credit report that announces his history to anyone who looks. He cannot visit his daughter without being arrested. Every exit has been closed, not by violence, not by confrontation, not by anything that could be traced back to anger or bitterness or a woman scorned. By documentation, by phone calls, by the patient, thorough use of systems that exist specifically for situations like this one. There is one more piece of this story that I have not yet told you. The fourth child. The man who has been paying child support for 17 years for a son that is not his. This was the part that sat with Jade the longest. The other consequences, the likes revocation, the warrant, the tax refund, the IRS call, those were aimed at Marcus. They were deserved. They were proportionate, but this man, this person who had nothing to do with any of it, who had simply been in the wrong place and been selected as a convenient fiction, who had spent 17 years connected to a child he believed was his, paying money he was legally obligated to pay, building an identity as a father to a boy who shares none of his DNA. He deserved to know. Jade told her story to two people she trusted. They knew people with particular skill sets, the kind of skill sets that exist in the gray areas of the digital world, the kind of people who can find information that is not meant to be found. She is not going to tell you exactly what happened next, and I am not going to speculate. What I will tell you is that the process of getting the truth to the man who deserved it was set in motion. Whether he acted on it, whether he confronted it, whether he chose to upend 17 years of his life, or to file it and keep living, that was his choice to make. Jade's part was simply to make sure he had the information he needed to make it. Because that is the thing about truth. You cannot give it back once someone has it. You can only decide whether or not to pass it on. Jade decided to pass it on. I want to spend a moment here, because this detail has stayed with me since I first heard this story. His family knew, not just the adults, his mother, his siblings, their children, a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old, who had been told to call Jade Auntie and to play along and to act like this was a normal family situation, and not a carefully constructed fiction designed to give Marcus a respectable face. A 10-year-old child enlisted in an adult man's deception. I do not know how you explain that to yourself. I do not know what story you tell your 10-year-old about why they have to pretend that this woman their uncle brings to dinner is his girlfriend when they know she is not. I do not know what that does to a child's understanding of truth and love, and the things adults are supposed to protect them from, but I know it happened. And I know that Jade sat in those family dinners and felt like she belonged somewhere, and the whole room knew she did not. That is not something I can wrap in a lesson or a silver lining. Some things are simply what they are. What I will say is this: the family's choice to participate in that lie did not ultimately protect Marcus. It protected him for exactly as long as Jade chose to believe the fiction. The moment she stopped, the moment Renee's message arrived and Jade said yes, tell me everything, the protection evaporated. You cannot build something durable on a foundation of other people's willingness to deceive. Eventually someone stops being willing, and then the whole structure comes down. I want to talk about something before we get to the ending, because this story gets told sometimes as a revenge story, a satisfying one. A list of consequences that arrived in a particular order, and destroyed a particular man's ability to keep living the life he had constructed. And it is that, it absolutely is that, but I think it is also something else. It is a story about a woman who had just survived 12 years of one kind of slow erosion, and walked directly into a year of a completely different kind, who opened her heart again, genuinely, fully, without the guardedness that experience might have entitled her to, and had that openness used against her. She was selected because she was trustworthy, because she was the kind of woman who believed people, because she extended good faith as a default rather than making people earn it, because she was the cool girlfriend who did not make demands, or ask difficult questions, or push back on stories that did not quite add up. Those qualities, the trust, the generosity, the willingness to give people the benefit of the doubt, are not weaknesses. I want to be very clear about that. They were weaponized. There is a difference. A weapon is not the same as a wound. The knife is not the problem. The person who picked it up and chose to use it, that is the problem. Jade did not become less trusting after this. She did not close herself off, or decide that openness was the mistake she needed to correct. What she did was become more thorough, more willing to name what she was seeing, more likely to say out loud the things she was filing away internally. She did not let Marcus take her belief in people from her. She just made sure he paid for what he did with it. There is an update. Marcus is in legal difficulty on multiple fronts simultaneously. The child support warrant, the IRS inquiry into the business, the credit report, the license, the arrest he walked into at the meeting, he thought was a family reunion. He is not having a good time. Renee, for the first time in years, feels like the system is actually working in the direction it was supposed to work. She is not holding her breath. She has been disappointed before. But there is a warrant. There is an intercepted refund. There is something on record that was not there before. The oldest daughter, who is now old enough to understand some of what has happened, knows that someone fought for her. She does not know all the details. She does not need to. She knows that a woman she has never met decided she was worth the effort. Jade is doing well. She is dating again, very slowly and very carefully, with the kind of attention to detail she perhaps did not extend to the situation before. She runs background checks now. She does not consider this paranoid. She considers it sick information gathering. She is also, she says, completely at peace with every single thing she did. Not because she is a vengeful person. She will tell you quite specifically that she is not. She walked away from relationships before without looking back. She has let things go that she had agreed to pursue. She could not let this one go. Not because of what he did to her, but because of what he was still doing to everyone else while no one was watching. She was watching, and she was thorough. I have been sitting with this story for a while now, and the thing I keep returning to is not the revenge. Satisfying as it is, and it is deeply satisfying, I will not pretend otherwise. The tax refund intercepted the day before it was due. The arrest warrant he walked into, thinking he was going to meet his daughter. The IRS call. All of it. What I keep returning to is the decision point. The moment Jade sat with everything Renee had told her, and made a choice. She could have walked away lucky. She chose to stay thorough. And I think there is something in that choice that is worth sitting with. Because we are told, women especially are told, that the dignified response to betrayal is to leave quietly, to not make a fuss, to take the high road, which is usually code for absorbing the cost of someone else's choices, without making them uncomfortable. The high road and the quiet road are not always the same road. Sometimes the high road is the one where you pick up the phone and call child support services, where you file the report with the IRS, where you make sure the man who has been paying for a child that is not his has the information he needs to make an informed choice about his own life. Sometimes the high road is thorough, and sometimes the woman who takes it does not do it for herself at all. She does it because she is the only one in a position to, and she has decided that position comes with a responsibility. If you are listening to this right now and you are in a moment where someone is asking you to walk away quietly, to consider yourself lucky and let it go and not make things difficult, I am not telling you to stay and fight. Sometimes walking away is genuinely the right thing and the brave thing and the thing that protects you, but I am asking you to make that choice consciously. Not because you were told to, not because making noise would be uncomfortable, not because keeping the peace feels safer than disturbing it. Make it because you chose it, and if you choose to stay thorough instead, if you choose to be the person who ensures the consequences find the right person, know that there is dignity in that too. More than dignity, there is justice. And sometimes justice is the most loving thing you can offer the people who came after you, who would have been next, who never knew they needed someone to be thorough on their behalf. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think of something or someone, or a moment you have been trying to decide what to do with, leave me a comment. Tell me what you are thinking. I read everyone. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone who is being told to consider themselves lucky and walk away quietly, send this to them. Let them decide for themselves. This is Calm Drama with Sophia. New story tomorrow. Stay with me.